right, we'll get started here. Remind everyone that this is being recorded, and we'll do some brief introductions. We'll start with those around the table, and then we'll go around the room, and the ones on the phone. I can
wait here.
Patrick Adams, AMWA.
John Kamik, Sawa.
Cindy Rule, ADWR.
Ron Whitler, City of Buckeye.
Gretchen Irwin, City of Goodyear.
Zach Richards, ADWR.
Tim Tomier, Tucson Water.
Tyson Lee, Auburn, Arizona.
Susan Craig, Kyle Center for Water Policy.
Sam Hughes, State Land Department.
Bruce Allen, SRP.
Chuck Cullum, CAP.
Maria Martinez.
Ray Isaacson, Wilson.
Steve Moore, City of Yuma.
Dallas Myron, Travis.
Joseph Sig, Buckeye Water Conservation District.
W. T. Gladden, Buckeye Water Conservation District.
Paul Carter, Buckeye Water Conservation and Drainage District.
Mike Pierce, Buckeye Water Conservation and Drainage District.
Carol Ward, ADWR.
Orestes Morphine, CAP. Joe Leger, Jacobs.
Ray Blocker, SRP.
Brad Eslin, ADWR.
very good. And I heard Wade on the phone. Who else is on the phone?
Rick, I don't know.
Shane, except for. This is John Rasmussen with Reclamation.
Okay. Okay, Rick from up course. And do we have Scott Reiner on the phone?
Scott, are you on the phone? We got people coming.
Did you say Jamie Kelly?
Jamie Kelly's on the line. As well as Chris Connor and Melody Weir.
Melody Lyer is here.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have anyone from El Paso on the line yet? If not, we'll maybe skip down to our next agenda item to give Scott or one of his crew time to get on the phone. Let's do that. Chuck, can you, are you prepared to
Certainly.
do your piece?
Yes, so at the last meeting, we talked briefly about the results of the August 24-month study on the Colorado River. As you may recall, the August 24-month study is determinative of the 2020 operating regime for the Colorado River system. And the results of the August study indicated that Lake Mead is projected to be at elevation 1089.4 on January 1st of 2020. And that means that the operating condition for 2020 for the Colorado River is in what is being referred to as Drought Contingency Plan Tier 0, which requires the Central Arizona Water Conservation District to contribute 192,000 acre-feet of CAP water to Lake Mead. If the projection had been elevation 1090, 0.6 of a foot higher, then we would have been in the normal operating range of Lake Mead, which would have made 192,000 acre-feet of water available to Central Arizona through the CAP project. The question was asked, well, how much water is 0.6 of a foot, and would the operation of the Yuma desalting plant have contributed to a different outcome than Tier 0? So we went back, our technical staff, Orestes Morphine, who's here, went back and looked at the operating criteria for the plant, what how the plant has operated historically, meaning the pilot run of the human desalting plant in 2010 and 11. And we looked at two different scenarios. One is if the plant had been fully operational in 2019 and conserving water consistent with the design and the design criteria of the plant and the mission of the plant, would Lake Mead have ended the year higher than, would the August 24-month study projection have shown Mead above elevation 1090? So first, the estimate of volume that we missed the projection by. So 0.6 of a foot in Lake Mead at elevation 1089 is roughly equivalent to 48,000 acre feet. And the plant is designed to conserve about 80,000 acre feet a year when you consider blending. And that volume, when added to what the existing August 24-month study projection, clearly shows that if the plant had been operating at full capacity for the year, we would have ended at above elevation 1090. I think the number is 1090.5. So, what is the value of 192,000 acre feet in the CAP system? Using the values that have been established by the agreements between CAWCD and the participants in the NIA pool as part of the DCP implementation plan in Arizona. We have a cost, we have established a payment schedule for the water that's impacted for reductions in the NIA pool, and it begins in 2019 at a cost of $240 an acre foot. It escalates at 3% annually. So the 2020 value for that water supply has been established at $247 an acre foot. So we think of this as a replacement cost. So if CAP were to go out and pay parties to replace 192,000 acre feet, the current market, the current expectation is $247 an acre foot in 2020. The quick math is that replacement value is $47.4 million. So that's one way to think about the impact of not operating the human desalting plant in 2019 is a replacement cost of $47.4 million. We did a separate analysis where we looked at the other opportunity that Reclamation has been working on, which is the expansion of the 242 well field. So the 242 well field is available. Its name is derived from Minute 242 of the 1944 Water Treaty. Minute 242 governs the management of salinity in the water that's delivered to Mexico. The United States has the ability to pump groundwater in south of Yuma in the boundary pumping well field. It's within 5 miles of the southerly boundary with Mexico. Those wells generate relatively high quality water that can be delivered to the Colorado River to offset other drainage uses in the Colorado, in Yuma area. So we assumed that the United States expanded that well field, which they're working on and have been working on since 2015. It was slated to be operational in 2017, but it is delayed. We have an agreement with the United States that if they pump 25,000 acre-feet of water out of the 242 and deliver it in lieu of releases from Lake Mead, CAWCD will defer our contract rights to divert that conserved water, so we know how much the well field is capable of yielding. So we assumed that if they had operated the well field consistent with their plan, in 2018 and operated the YDP at 1/3 capacity, consistent with their operating scheme in the pilot run, which was, again, 2010, 2011, operating at 1/3 capacity. If they had taken those two actions in 2018 and 2019, we would have ended the year, 2019 at 1090.7 feet up. So again, we would have found ourselves in a normal operating condition. The lack of action, again, can be characterized as costing CAP and Arizona $47.4 million worth of water. Mic drop.
Sure, okay.
I'm sorry, Brett.
Just for clarification, was that the well field and the plant operating in 2018 and 19?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes. So two actions, two projects for 2 years.
Thank you.
And that's the plant just at a third capacity?
That's correct.
And what is the cost of the plant per acre foot to run the plant?
What we've heard from Reclamation is somewhere between $600 and $700 an acre foot.
Depending on how much they run.
Right. That's why we, Gretchen, that's why we evaluated the 1/3 capacity option.
$30,000 acre feet times 700, about 21 million is what it would have cost to run the plant.
For 2 years, so multiply by 2, so 42 million versus 47 million.
And it didn't just cost us, it's gonna cost Nevada and Mexico.
That's correct. So that's an excellent point. So the cost to Mexico is 41,000 acre feet, and the cost to Nevada is 8,000 acre feet. So in total, the failure to operate the plant costs water users in the United States and Mexico 241,000 acre feet of Colorado River opportunity.
Very good. Questions for Chuck from the committee? Anyone else in the room or on the phone?
Yeah, I just want to make sure this is going to be memorialized in your report, or as a report to superintendents, or what's this information?
We can provide a memorandum to the committee, and that can be shared out.
Yep. Thank you, Chuck.
Can distribute that.
Last month, when we met, there was discussion about the food plant. And I asked a question about the cost per acre foot. And he made a comment that the cost per acre foot advertised was X, but he wasn't including don't know exactly how he said it, I don't have the notes from that meeting here, but I think in Chuck's memorandum that we should expand on what exactly that $600 an acre foot number comes from the Yuma plant. Does that cover all the costs, or just some of the costs, and if so, which are?
We can reach out to the folks in the Yuma area office and get clarity on what was included in the number that they shared at the previous meeting.
I believe they also said they're taking a new look at those numbers this year, so we'll have some numbers that we can use, and then they'll be hopefully providing us additional, more up-to-date numbers sometime in the next few months.
And if you'll indulge, I see Jim Logier here. You led the study during the pilot run of alternative options for the plant, and that study resulted in some cost numbers. Perhaps we can pull those as well, if you believe they're still reasonably valid.
Probably has to be updated for inflation costs,
But,
the reference point.
right.
What I've heard, Reclamation Boulder City was doing a cost update themselves. I haven't seen the numbers, but very full probably does those. Anyway, data point.
Right, it's our collective experience that Reclamation episodically updates the numbers to operate the plant, and they seem to update in one direction.
I recall that.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
think I recall now what I thought he said last month was that $600 number was the cost to run the plant and produce the water. Didn't include the amortization of the cost to water the plant or that. So it's just important that the numbers reflect what the total costs are. They can get down the wrong path.
Yeah, we can get clarity on the numbers, and I think that's fine. I think the point is still there that already running the plant would have saved Arizona some money, possibly how much can be debated, but the price of water in this state, I don't see it going down. It'll probably go up, and so this problem just gets worse. I'd like to get some thoughts from the members here on how they would like to proceed, how they'd like the committee to proceed. Open it up for discussion. Do we have,
Mr. Reinhardt is on the line.
so we'll just take maybe a few minutes here, or we can circle back around at the end of the meeting if that's okay with everyone, and give you some time to think about how we'd like to proceed.
In regards to the human desalting?
Yes, with the human desalting plant, would we like to maybe schedule some time with the Bureau of Reclamation to further discuss our concerns and see if we can get them to act sooner than later? I'll let you think about it, and then we can discuss it towards the end. Let's go ahead, and if Scott, you're ready, I'll let you introduce yourself, and then talk a little bit about your desalination plant. We're also interested in your brine disposal methods, and then we'll have some questions for you. Thanks, Scott.
Okay. Yes, my name is Scott Reinert. I work with Philip on the multi-states. I'm the water resources manager for El Paso Water. El Paso Water Utilities has a desalination plant, uses brackish groundwater, about 3,000 TDS that we're desalting. The maximum capacity of the plant is 27 MGD, of which during full operation we would produce 3 MGD of concentrate, which we dispose of with deep well injection. And it's been in operation for about 12 years now.
Do you have some cost estimates of desalinating that water? The cost, capital costs of putting in the wells, maybe even some O&M costs of the brine disposal wells?
Yes. I can send me a separate email and I'll get you some information on all the pricing.
Okay.
We can, break it out. It's the overall cost for the entire plant, including the source wells that have the brackish water, the plant, the pipelines, the injection well facilities, was $93 million.
And that includes the brine disposal wells?
Yes.
Okay. And then could you talk a little bit about the new plant that you have, or you have an agreement with for brine disposal?
Okay. Right. As I recall, Phil, you were out there when it opened, or the grand opening.
Yeah,
so,
I was out there.
Right.
Just give the committee maybe a little overview about what's going on there, and then we can discuss kind of how it's proceeded, and we might even talk about success stories.
Okay. So this facility that Philip's talking about is called EWM, Enviro Water Minerals, and it is located next to the El Paso Desalination Plant. And the concept there is that the portion of the brine that we generate from our desalting activity would be, they would remove or recover the salts from this operation and sell these salts to market. We could, this partnership would allow them to sell these salts and make the profit that they make from whatever sales agreements they have. They would use recovered gypsum. They use that for agriculture, milk of magnesia, I think some hydrochloric acid for industrial applications. I think I'm missing something else, but so there is no disposal element with this process. It's full recovery, and then also in addition, let me back up. They would take a portion of our concentrate, 1 MGD of concentrate. Our TDS of our concentrate now is about 15,000, and they would also use a portion, some brackish groundwater that's 3,000, and kind of blend those two sources and recover this water. And then once they take out all the salts, then they would send us back the permeate, and we add that to our system.
And you said that was 2 MGD of treated water?
Well, it's 1 MGD of concentrate, and the other is 1 MGD of brackish groundwater. That's what the EWM facility is contracted to take from us.
Very good. And so when I was out there, it wasn't running yet. Do they have it up and running?
No, it's still under commissioning. I think the process is a complicated one. You know, when we opened our desalination plant, it took us about a year to kind of get it all worked out, and that was just with RO treatment. As you recall, when you took a tour of their facility, they have RO, they have ocean RO, they have EDR, electrodialysis reactors, they have other separator, they have microfiltration, regular RO. So all these different processes have to all kind of be working in concert together. But so they're still, what we're hearing is that they're still under commissioning.
Do they have a deadline or even an estimate of when they'll be operating at full capacity?
I'm not aware of any such time frame.
And this is a P3 project, so that means that you're really not on the hook, El Paso's really not on the hook too much until they start treating your concentrate and delivering water back to you. Is that correct?
Right. So, yes, that's a good concept there. It is a partnership. We literally give them our concentrate and our brackish groundwater, and they remove all the salts from it. They sell the salts. They make all the profit that they can, and then we buy back the permeate at wholesale rates. So it is an agreement that we have, and then let's see. Oh, then the arsenic, they're not able to sell or get rid of the arsenic, so we actually take the arsenic back. So we will dispose of arsenic with the rest of our sludges.
Okay, I know we have a few questions around the table. I'm going to open it up for other people to discuss rather than just myself. Chuck?
Hi, Scott. This is Chuck Cullum with Central Arizona Project.
Yes, hi.
How are you? It's been a while.
I am good.
Can you comment on what the all-in unit cost for operating the desal plant is? You indicated it was $9 million for all the facilities.
93
No,
million.
93 million.
93.
Sorry. 93
Yep.
million. Can you give us a sense of what the unit cost, the all-in unit cost is for operating the plant?
I have it's $2 per 1,000 gallons on O&M, but that cost doesn't include the capital amortization. So if we looked at the annual operating budget and how much they produce, it is about $2 per 1,000 gallons. That's my latest understanding. And then I think it's anywhere from $500 to $700 per acre foot.
That's the all-in?
Yes, I believe so. I can confirm those numbers, but that's been my understanding.
And again, Scott, this is Chuck. With regards to the EWM project, do you have any sense of whether that's scalable technology? It's looks like it's a 2 MGD plant or concept.
Right.
Do you think it can be scaled up to larger flows?
I would think so. I think they have ideas of being able to be a turnkey operation where they would actually produce the, do everything from start to finish, where they would produce all the water and they would distribute or take care of the concentrate as one plant. See, we have the plant and they would take care of the concentrate, but I think they have concepts of doing everything, and that's part of their working concepts. But I don't know about the scalability. I'm assuming yes, and why I think this is so important for this industry is, inland desalting and the concentrate management is a significant challenge, and I think this is an innovative concept that really, I think if we're patient with it, I think we're going to find very beneficial things. Injection wells are problematic in various states because of either geology or policy, and evaporative ponds, I think I told Bob Lotz when he came out here that if you, for our plant, 3 MGD of concentrate, if you built evaporative ponds, that's 600 acres of land, and if you had to put a liner on it like Bob Lotz does at his facility, or that would be $300 million for evaporative ponds to evaporate 3 MGD. And that's a lot of money, and that doesn't even include land purchase. So these concepts of managing the concentrate or minimizing concentrate, deep well injection, I like to think of trying to build a diversified concentrate management portfolio. And all these research is needed to kind of minimize concentrate, evaporate in certain circumstances. Deep well injection, I still think, is very productive for us. We have a very favorable aquifer that we're not injecting under pressure, and we're injecting into something that has 8,000 TDS. So we got to think, well, there's no other use for that reservoir. San Antonio, when they're injecting into 90,000 TDS. So I think there are certain geologic environments that are suitable for injection, and so I'm a proponent of deep well injection where it works. And then if it doesn't, then I think an EWM, byproducts recovery, and other evaporative techniques. But if you have to go evaporation for a plant, it's going to have to be probably a much smaller plant.
Yeah, if anyone here wants to see what 640 acres of evaporation ponds look like, just next time you fly to LA, look out the window, and Palo Verde has roughly 640 acres of evap pond.
Square mile.
Yeah, square mile of evap pond. And they are not cheap at all. And that's, I think, kind of the core reason why we're so interested in what you've done, Scott. And we haven't, we're just now looking at deep well injection at scale, at least in the state. And this other technology that EWM's doing is very interesting.
Yeah.
If you compare the two cost-wise, for El Paso, is one cheaper than the other in general? We talk about scaling up. If you were to scale up your desal plant sometime in the future, would you lean more towards EWM's technology or more towards deep well injection?
For us, it would be deep well injection.
So Scott, this is Chuck again. I just want to make sure we all understand, your deep well injection is in cavernous limestone,
Yeah.
is my understanding, with no injection pressure?
That is correct.
And I think that's fundamentally different than the experience we would encounter in Arizona unless we have unexplored limestone aquifers.
Right.
How deep is
our injection wells are drilled to a depth of 4,000 feet, and they're cased from about 2,500 feet. So the lower 1,500 feet is uncased, fractured, cavernous limestone, dolomite, and it's in these fractures where the injected water goes into the geologic formation. So it is a vast geologic reservoir that is fractured. So that's certainly important.
So they're very deep wells. It's kind of, do we know in Arizona what our formation looks like?
It doesn't look like that.
At depth? Okay.
No, our, I mean, there are lots of smarter geologists here than me.
Evaporate deposits in Pinal County.
Say that again?
Deep evaporates in Pinal County that have been looked at as natural gas reservoirs, inject natural gas in there. Not sure that they've studied for deep well injection, right?
How
Yeah,
about across the rest of the state?
You don't want to introduce a solute into a salt deposit, because you might have some challenges.
Yeah, you have to be careful of that. As far as the rest of the state, I don't know specific areas. I know there are other locations. How well that's been studied, I couldn't say.
Yeah.
Scott, this is Bruce Hallen of Salt River Project. Not being familiar with your aquifer, it appears that you're withdrawing about 30,000 acre feet a year.
Say that again?
It appears that you're withdrawing about 30,000 acre feet a year, correct?
Oh, for the plant?
Yes.
Oh, the plant is, we've been operating at about 9 to 10,000 acre feet per year. So it's not being operated at full capacity.
Okay.
We operated, we've had some events like a severe river drought a couple of years ago, where we didn't have expected river water, and we really ramped up production of the desalination plant. Or we had a unexpected freeze in the middle of winter in 2011, and this resulted in us running the plant at full capacity in the middle of the winter, which is usually unheard of. But so the plant has been very responsive in addressing those needs, and then we've had a build-up's the wrong word. We've had an increased amount of annual production in the last 12 years, starting from about 3,000 acre foot in 2007, and then most recently in 2018 is about 9,000 acre feet. So it's showing a trend of going up, but the way we operate the plant is, it is a more expensive plant to operate it when we have our surface water and it's abundant and it's cleaner and cheaper. We're going to use that, and likewise, we kind of manage our costs by, we keep this plant in a state of readiness and always operating, but there are other sources of water that are cheaper. We will use those first.
So typically, what's the percent of this water in comparison to your entire water portfolio?
This past year in 2018, it produced about 10,000 acre feet, and our total annual demand is 120,000.
Okay. Thanks.
So you said there was a location in Texas that is depositing brine into a formation that's 90,000?
Yes, that's San Antonio.
So that's really close to just solid salt.
It seems like it would be. I don't know.
Right, 100,000 is solid salt.
Yeah.
No?
No.
10%. Okay.
Yeah.
We can all agree it's hypersaline.
Yeah, I think we can use that term safely without anyone getting hurt.
My point being, I'm not a geologist by any means, is maybe there are formations, or can we rule out that there are not formations in the state that we could do some deep well injection? Or does it need to be explored?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking that I was kind of comparing Arizona and New Mexico, and they're big states that have a lot of desert, of course, and would have to think that there's some extensive limestones somewhere in the state of Arizona, but that's just my opinion. And the limestones, if they're fractured, are probably pretty good geologic formations for injection. But again, if they're limestone and they're not fractured, then it's like trying to inject water into cement. It won't work. So I would think at some very basic level, the state might want to contemplate with their Board of Economic Geology, those kind of people, that they have a long history of mining in Arizona. Maybe there's some insight and knowledge of what the geologic formations are. And then maybe find some areas that we're testing and characterizing. Because I think if you find something, maybe you can't do the 3 MGD, but maybe half an MGD. And these zones might be productive. And if another way of looking at it is if the TDS, think of it an area with has very high TDS, like 20,000 TDS, it would not be subject to EPA or state protection because it's not considered a source of drinking water. So if you were able to find an area with 10 or 20,000 TDS and do pumping tests on that water, and it pumps out at a high rate, then presumably you could inject it that same amount, and you're not contaminating any kind of aquifer because it's unusable. Maybe think of it as finding brackish zones of water for either a source and then a disposal. And if it's a sandstone formation but has porosity, and to thinking of a production like a geologist or a hydrogeologist would think, this might be an opportunity for injection, provided it has high TDS and is of no other use than injection.
Any other questions?
Scott, this is another question from Bruce.
Okay.
I'm assuming you also pump groundwater that isn't high in salts. Is that correct?
Yes, we have most of our groundwater is fresh. In fact, if you let's see, we pumped this past year. We pumped probably 100,000 acre feet. Let's say 80,000 acre feet, of which 10,000 of that was desalted from our plant. So 70,000 acre feet of fresh versus 10,000 of desalted water. So most of our water is fresh.
Okay, thank you.
But in time, we expect that percentage that proportion to change. We have considerably more brackish groundwater in our aquifer than we do freshwater. So in time, we think that we're positioned with our desalination plant to use it more and more as needed.
Okay. Hey, Scott, this is Chuck again. Could you comment on how the EWM project came about? Did you guys request a pilot study? Did they just parachute into your backyard? How did it happen?
Okay, so my understanding is that they knew about our desalination plant. I believe that they're from the Houston area, and they did a pilot study. The pilot study evaluated their technologies. The pilot study was approved by the TCEQ, the regulators, and I think because of that approval, then they were able to get funding to build the plant. So the pilot study proved that this concept could work in concept. So I think they began discussions with us, and if you talk to EWM, they'll say that the real concept for this type of facility is born in the oil industry with the refinery, where they refine oil and gas, and those impurities that they take out of that in the refinement process, instead of disposing of them, they actually sell them as chemicals. So that's kind of what they're doing in our situation. They're refining or purifying water, removing salts, and instead of disposing of salts like we do, or you evaporate them, whatever, they actually would sell these salts to market. So the business model for this is born in the refining oil refining petrochemical industry.
But they came to you with the concept because you have the brine source, right?
Yeah, the brine source, and then they, they're smart enough to recognize that inland desalting has a future in I would say the arid states, and that the concentrate management is a huge problem. So I think that they see that this is a solution to some of the big challenges with inland desalting.
Right. And so how long, when was the facility opened, and how long has it been in commissioning?
Philip came to El Paso, I believe it was in April of 2017. So we've been, that was what they called the grand opening. So that's 2.5 years later. We're still being told it's under commissioning. Prior to that, it took them probably 2 years to build the facility. So that probably started building in 2015. Probably did pilot testing in 2013. Had lengthy discussions with our attorneys, their attorneys. We basically said that the concentrate that we produce, we cannot guarantee a specific salt loading or limitations on the salt. And we worked through some of those various concepts with their legal and our legal. And so I would guess that maybe in 2012 or so is when we were first approached.
And do you have a sense of when it'll be, for lack of a better term, operating? I mean, commissioning is not the same as meeting the contract requirements.
Yes, I just don't have a sense to report on that. I don't know.
So it sounds like it's, not trying to be uncharitable here, but it sounds like 2.5 years into it, they're still working the kinks out?
That's fair.
Okay.
That's accurate.
Thanks. All right.
It's
not off the shelf technology yet.
Well, and if you've talked to them, what they will tell you is that all the techniques and I mentioned the different, I think there's 4 or 5 different black boxes, if you will. All of these black boxes are industry, used in the industry. But what they are doing is putting them all together in concert to make this, the magic happen. So, in a sense, the whole component is a black box, but the individual components are not, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. And I recognize it's complicated, and illustrating that bench scale is different than commercial scale.
Yes, and Philip has been out here. It was a grand opening. I don't think they hit any champagne, but it was close. It was working during the day. But it was they had political people and everything, but we haven't heard much on it. And it's a very extensive facility. It looks like a huge, huge warehouse. And inside of that warehouse is RO units and lots of equipment. It, of course, no doubt was an expensive project to build.
Yeah, and during that opening, it was nice because they did answer every question we could think of. It's not like they kept this thing top secret. They showed the details of it. They had a lot of things open. A lot of things were open because they were still running SCADA wire and those types of things to them. But they're very open to talk about the technology, even though they do have a private proprietary interest in it. It's kind of nice.
Philip?
Go ahead.
Yeah, at the multi-states probably 2 years ago, road at lunchtime, and he mentioned there's known unknowns and unknown unknowns. This is what they've been experiencing, so that it is complicated. I would like to point out something else, that we are, I want to say that we're partners, you know, the brine and then all that, we get permeate. We have, in our plant, invested in a pipeline connection where we distribute the concentrate from our plant over to their plant. So we have incurred some cost, you know, of making sure that we can get the concentrate over to them and then the permeate that they produce back to us. So we have incurred some costs, but we like to think it's been a cooperative effort on our part, but the bulk of the capital expense has been funded by somebody else.
Very good. Yes.
Just one point. As part of what EWM's schedule was, they had to do a pilot study for TCQ, which is the regulatory drinking water in Texas. They had to pilot the front end process in order to demonstrate that water they produce was meeting drinking water standards, so they could sell it back to El Paso and they would just blend it in. So that was part of the process. They had to do that pilot study. I assume they might have to do the same thing if we were to apply the technology here at ADQ, but that's a question we're talking about. Does it have an influence on implementing that technology here? It's something that
Yeah. Very good. Any other questions for Scott? We have him on the phone. I really appreciate you taking the time, Scott. I'll follow
my
up
pleasure.
with you, and I know I'll see you in February. But
well,
thank
great.
you very
I
much.
appreciate the opportunity. So thank you. So just out of curiosity, is this an Arizona Desalination Group, right?
Yes.
Like
yes, I should
Cal
have introduced
Desal,
us.
right? Arizona Desal, right?
Yeah, this is actually a committee under the Governor's Water Council, and I got the privilege of being chair of the Desal Committee, and so
great.
You're participating in that meeting today.
Oh, great. My pleasure. So any other questions?
I do have one. Sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
No, go ahead.
Okay. How far do you transport the brine that you're injecting? How far away is it?
Our brine, our concentrate is injected 22 miles away from our plant.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Now, I can say this jokingly. We got as close to New Mexico as we could. I'm just kidding. Actually, it is true. We're within hundreds of feet of the state line. But that just happened to be where the best geologic formation was.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott. And
Okay.
I do appreciate
All right.
taking the
Well, I'll
time.
talk to you later.
Yep.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. Okay. Bye.
23 miles away and 4,000 feet deep.
Yep.
So, is deep well injection something that this committee wants to understand more of? Something that we want to rule out? Is it something that, where do we want to go from here?
I have two observations, if I may. One is that I think it's important to recognize that the geologic circumstances that El Paso is blessed with may exist in Arizona. They don't exist in proximity to West Salt River Valley or, most of Maricopa County, but they may. We heard about the potential for evaporite deposits, which also have cavernous porosity. Let me just take one step back. The expense and uncertainty of deep well injection is largely in pressurized systems, so where you have to actually push the dense fluid out of the well into the formation. There's lots of uncertainty with that. That's also has potential for seismic hazard. It's essentially fracking in some ways, depending on the pressures. So it might be helpful to see if it's relatively easy to find areas in the state that have cavernous porosity. There may be some in the Colorado Plateau region where the Mississippian limestones exist, down in southeastern Arizona, like Whetstone Mountain, places with caves. Not, just to be clear, not suggesting that Kartchner Caverns is a repository. It could be the, combined swimming pool. No, not saying that. Do not report that to President Atkins, if you would.
Too shallow.
Yeah, right? That's exactly right. But it may be worth asking the department, requesting the Department of Water Resources to, with their hydrology department, to explore that question more, including evaporites.
So what about oil and gas emissions? Because sometimes if it's not a water well, it might not necessarily need an NOI GWR.
Right, and asking the department to use all the means at their disposal might be a way to do that.
Just to see what we have for formations, or what we know for possible formations.
Right, because the way in which large capacity deep well injection like they have in El Paso is feasible because they don't have downhole pressure. They're not pumping, it's just a gravity system. And if we have those opportunities, it would be good to understand where they are. The second observation is we heard from DEQ about the water quality requirements, or the process they're working under for defining where, if, and what the requirements are for deep well injection. And just reminding ourselves what they told us. I actually can't remember, but I think every aquifer is a drinking water aquifer.
Yep. Well, they said there were some exceptions in the presentation they gave. My notes said there are 2 mines, Gunnison Mine in Cochise, the Florence Copper Corporation in Pinal, and then Morton 12. In those situations, that might be, so what you were saying earlier, that there are some areas where the groundwater is brackish enough, they can inject in those locations and get the EPA exemption. So it does require EPA.
Right, you have to go through the rather extensive process.
Right.
So from that standpoint, I don't think, I think we just need to document what the opportunities for deep well injection are and what the constraints are, and understanding, that without favorable geologic, without extremely favorable geologic conditions, you're stuck with pressurized systems that carry additional costs, additional uncertainty, and potential seismic hazard.
And there are places that do that.
Yep.
Colorado's one of them, that they do pressurize the brine in order to get it into the formation.
92,000 PSI cost.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah,
It is a lot of pressure.
Yeah. And the cost goes up. Yes, you got it, Bruce.
Which makes this EWM experiment more interesting because the byproducts recovery and minimizing brine is a way in which you can reduce either the magnitude of well injection or reduce the magnitude of evaporation, other brine disposal. Brine disposals are constrained, in my opinion.
And I don't know if it's prohibitively expensive. It's all comparative. It's probably less expensive than evap ponds, similar to what Palo Verde has, but it's considerably more expensive than some of the other technologies we've talked about. And I think Goodyear's done some extensive work comparing brackish disposal technologies.
We're doing a study right now, but we have two plants that basically desalinate water. They're both being upgraded and expanded, so the problem continues to grow, so we're in the midst of the study right now. Right now it goes to our wastewater treatment plant and then back into the ground, so we're not helping ourselves.
Not sustainable, but gets you through. What technologies are you looking at as part of that study?
One is to go to Palo Verde. No.
Okay. Oh, that's fair.
At night.
That might be the most expensive.
Right.
I don't know, but
so we did
to look
do
at.
a brine wetland study, which was very successful in removing the metals, but it further concentrated the output. So what went in is 8,000 parts per million, came out at 12 to 15. So in order for us to discharge that water, which we were considering discharging it to the Gila, we would have to blend it back down. And that's like throwing good water after bad, right? And then we also had selenium issues because we have naturally occurring selenium, and the TMDL for where we were located was 2 or something very low. And so our ambient selenium exceeded that. So while the brine wetlands are a great idea, they're not going to work for us. I haven't been involved in the study. I know the Intel plant basically incinerates their brine concentrate, takes it to the Butterfield landfill, which is within
Yeah, zero liquid discharge.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what all they're looking at, but I know those are a couple of things that we've considered.
Okay. Not deep well injection in the Goodyear area?
No.
Okay.
We're doing shallow well injection with our recharge, right?
Okay, so I think that's a good suggestion. If DWR is willing to kind of take a look at what others have done and see if there's formations out there that are good for brine disposal, maybe I'll get with you and we can see if we can report back at the next meeting. Okay. See where we go from here. Yeah. Brine disposal probably won't be easy, but I think one way or another we get there. I think as far as EWM, maybe we wait, follow up with Scott, and see when they get operating, how it performs, and then maybe have them come back in and do lessons learned and some success stories for us at that point. What does everybody else think? Is that an okay? Okay, we'll plan on doing that. I'll follow up with Scott in a couple months and then again in February and just keep track of that project. Okay. Anything else on brine disposal before we move on to the next topic on our agenda? Okay, the next topic is discussion for the West Salt River Valley Subcommittee. First of all, I'd like to discuss maybe renaming that subcommittee. My hope was to not just have them look at the West Salt River Valley, but look at regulatory and maybe legislative hurdles for using brackish water across the state. Now, each location is going to have its own hurdles. Some are in AMAs, some are not. But maybe we can come up with a better name for that subcommittee that's going to meet next week that describes more regulatory and legislative hurdles statewide. And then, you know, they can use, for example, West Salt River Valley and come up with regulatory hurdles there. But hopefully, if we get to the point where we're proposing different regulations or we're proposing something to go to before legislation, it benefits the whole state and not just one location in the state. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll come up with a name for that subcommittee unless somebody wants to throw one out now. I'll give it some thought and follow up with DWR on that. And then what would we like them to discuss? And do we need to well, I'll open it up with that question. What would the committee like to see them discuss? With hopefully we can focus them so that they just have a few meetings and can complete whatever we task them with and be done, and this isn't a subcommittee that continues on indefinitely.
So do we have a, so maybe what we can help frame is what are the significant, because what I heard you say is regulatory and legislative hurdles to brackish groundwater desal development, right? And that maybe a way to paraphrase that down is what are the constraints to, you know, the barriers to developing this resource. So if we think about it from that perspective, what does the committee think those barriers are? And then the work group can drill in to a meeting just to sort of drill into it and see if there are pathways to address it. So one of the things, just as an example, the one constraint using the West Salt River Valley as an example is the jurisdictions that who has rights to the brackish groundwater and how is it available. And by how is it available in the West Salt River Valley is in the AMAs, does use of that water trigger perverse incentives like causing you to have a GRD replenishment obligation? That seems like that would be problematic, right? That seems like two questions. One is, are there jurisdictional ownership issues that need to be resolved? And second is, does the use of the water trigger other regulatory constraints? Those are just two that pop into my mind, and maybe, because I'm not an expert on groundwater, maybe the jurisdictional problem doesn't exist. I don't know. But I do know that the regulatory framework of whether pumping groundwater in the AMAs, there's no off-ramp for poor quality that I'm aware of. Maybe I'm wrong.
And so the subcommittee is going to look for those hurdles.
And the committee, I think, can help sort of identify some to work on the front end rather than the smaller group sort of navel. We're supposed to navel gaze. Anyway, that's just an idea.
Yeah. Very good. And you can bring some of these ideas to the first subcommittee meeting that's going to be next week that Scott Miller is going to chair.
So do you think then the first meeting is about listing these things out?
Yeah, I think so. I think that would be good. But again, if you have anything you want them to focus on, please let us know ahead of time. Let Scott know ahead of time. He can put it on his agenda and make sure that he covers those topics. But I don't see why at that first meeting you can't look at regulatory and legislative issues. Is there anything else that we need them to look at? I don't want them to get into the adjudication issues. I think that's going to be a better use of our time will be in probably the courtroom for that topic rather than in the subcommittee. So it's things that the legislation and our regulators can help us with are kind of the things I'd like them to focus on. But if somebody else has some other ideas, I'd like to hear them.
One would be what the definition of poor quality groundwater is for, say, the poor quality groundwater withdrawal permit.
Yeah.
The only thing I know that's in rules, there's a definition of mineralized water as 3,000 TDS, but that's the only thing I'm aware of.
Yeah, so that's definitely a hurdle, and maybe ultimately that's something that the subcommittee can propose some language to our committee, and then we can even talk about taking it before the council and wherever it needs to go from there. So I think that's an excellent example, and I think, Chuck, your examples were good too. So those are some of the things that will be talked about in this subcommittee.
But I think we need to look at impacts to existing users too, because the water is in use. It's not being used, so I want to make sure that's included part of the discussion.
So yeah.
And you're just thinking within the actual, thinking poor quality water. From the water body.
Well, I mean that impacts all of the Southwest region. Yeah. So, not just the waterlogged area, but are there areas where the water is available and unused?
So you're talking.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. You know, depends on your irrigation district or city, within the cities now.
There's well impact rules. If you put a new well in to pump out that groundwater, who are you impacting?
Yeah.
And how does that affect economically other municipalities and irrigation districts? So.
Right, and I think we all need to acknowledge that the systems are all connected, right? And it's it would be poor policy to land a project on someone's back and ask them to be happy about it.
Yeah, I guess that was
about building consensus to support a water supply development that benefits as many people as possible and mostly locally.
Yeah, I think if this committee's looking at regulatory and legislative hurdles for a project that Goodyear may be proposing to put brackish water to beneficial use. You'd have to treat it, but then you'd use it there in the Goodyear area.
This is what we do now, so.
And there's no hurdles.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have to replenish it. We also have to replenish the part that we didn't recover from the RO plant. That goes against our GPCV.
Yeah.
You know, there's challenges to using it, but it's what we have to work with. I just don't want to see it used outside of our area, and then if somehow it's a you know, it impacts us negatively.
Oh, I see. So if it gets used outside the area, there needs to be limitations and considerations that go along with that.
Yeah, I'd hate to see it pumped out of our area, treated and shipped to Surprise, and no offense to anybody from Surprise, but, I mean, if it's gonna be pumped out of our area and treated, it should be for our benefit.
And you're, today, it's my understanding that it would be a crime for someone to plunk a well within your service area, extract it without your consent. Is that correct?
Well, if it's a non-exempt well, they can do that if they don't impact anybody else. If it's an exempt well, we can say no.
Well, that's. Do you imagine that someone would put a teeny little well and build a desal plant with a desire to extract it in your service area? I'm fairly certain that probably wouldn't happen. So, for a large capacity project, it feels like everyone has to agree, or it's dead on arrival, right? There are lots of opportunities for irrigation districts, for cities, for multi-county water conservation districts to push big obstacles in a path of a project development. State Land Department, everyone around this table has the opportunity to be a constraint. So I think the task is, are there projects that benefit a broad array of all of us to develop a resilient and robust water future for the West Salt River Valley, for other areas in central Arizona, for areas outside of the original AMAs? And what is holding that back? Are there regulatory constraints? Are there pieces of the groundwater code that have unintended consequences that prevent the state from building a water future using what we loosely call poor quality groundwater? I think there are. We've listed some of those constraints. So that's at least how I think about it. I want to be clear, we have no interest in extracting water from the West Salt River Valley and delivering it to Surprise. Although we love Surprise as a CAP customer. But our mission here as CAP is to facilitate the use of our system for the economic benefit of the area we serve. That can include wheeling treated desal water, if everyone agrees. So, I just want to, I think we've all been dancing around, is there some additional reason that CAP's here? No, we're not looking to extract anybody's water and deliver it somewhere else unless everybody agrees that that's a good thing. But more importantly, we're trying to figure out a way to help, just like APS, the Department of Water Resources, Salt River Project, to facilitate a water future that we can all agree with a resource that is currently largely unused.
Okay, I guess I might disagree there that the water is largely unused right now.
It's used by your community.
Right.
It's not in Yuma. It's not in the Colorado River Plateau.
But right now, I thought we were just talking about poor quality groundwater in the West SRV.
No, I thought we were talking about the task of the small work group to think why it's not the West Salt River Valley small work group. It's about regulatory constraints. That's what I understand Philip to say.
Yeah, we needed to change that name.
Okay.
And the name.
I thought you were making a work group for the West, because we raised concerns last meeting, and we talked about making a group just to discuss West SRV issues, and that's where I thought we were going.
Yeah, no, that's why I started this conversation with changing the name.
And I would broaden it. I think Chuck has mentioned it, and I think Gretchen's mentioned it too. It's also water and public policy that you're going to have to discuss, because that gets wrapped into this discussion. It's not just regulatory and legislative.
I'm just worried about...
Because ultimately that may drive your decision more than...
Yeah.
And if you don't recognize those things, you're kind of ignoring the obvious.
But do we want this subcommittee working on those things, or is it something...
raise them.
Okay. Raise the issue, but don't spend a lot of time working on them. But that's something that this committee's probably better...
It would make it easier for this committee then to address those items if they raise them.
If this group, what was formerly known as the West Salt River Valley Subcommittee, expanded to look statewide, it would seem to me that groundwater transportation questions should also be on the list.
Yeah, it should be on the list.
And there's going to have to be a certain level of technical understanding of what's available and what isn't.
Yeah. Which for most of these areas, there is some. And that may be another hurdle, is there needs to be more data on some of these areas.
So that should be part of the discussion.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe the place to start is, I think where Ron was pulling on, is definitions, right? We talked loosely about poor quality groundwater. What really do we mean? And should there be some regulatory relief if you're pumping, if Gretchen's community is pumping 3,000 part water and undergoing the expense of treating it, separating salt from the water, and then having to replenish that? Does that make sense? We have one vote for no. And what that does is that makes the policy outcome is it creates more incentive for local use of a resource it manages costs, right? And so anyway, it's just something to think about.
That's kind of where I'd like to see the subcommittee go, is what do those definitions look like? What type of relief can we get to make it more feasible to use some of these, make it more feasible for Goodyear to continue to do what they do, but maybe even expand it a little bit as the city grows, or however you plan on expanding it.
I'd love to take in partners to help us separate expenses, right?
Well, and I think this is the place to do that. So I like the ideas on the subcommittee. I think we're going to have a full agenda at this first meeting. I'll relay these to Scott. I know DWR is going to help me relay these to Scott Miller. Please come to the meeting. Express anything else you think of. We have 5 minutes here. We can circle back around. Go ahead.
The date and time and place of the meeting?
I don't have it in front of me. But can somebody help me?
Yeah.
Can do that.
Yeah. It's going to be October 18th, which is a Friday, from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. here in this building. We've got it in the 3175 conference room, so that's on the 3rd floor.
Did everybody get that? Very Very good, thank you. Okay. Yeah, I want to just real quickly, did anybody have any additional thoughts on the Yuma desalting plant? Any actions that you'd like us to take? We have CRUA coming up. That may be an opportunity to have a discussion with someone from the Bureau of Rec. I don't want to put everybody on the spot, but if you have any ideas now, it's a good time to voice them. I do plan on going to CRUA. You can talk to me between now and then. It's the second week of December. Yeah, go ahead.
And Chuck, when you were talking about the cost of the water, not using that water, the 192,000 acre feet versus the plant operated, is that where we want to stop in the analysis of the impact, is just to replace the cost of the water itself? Rather than looking, maybe it's not appropriate to look further and say, with that water, there would have been an economic impact as well. We just want to do water for water. Without this water,
so the water that we're foregoing under Tier 0 is largely directed to the water bank for future firming, for the GRD, for replenishment, for reclamation, for recharge to meet their firming obligations, and a little bit for the ag pool, CAP ag supplies. And so we can identify where historically that has gone and the benefits that derives without quantifying it. If that meets, I mean, it becomes difficult to quantify the value of underground storage to firm M&I communities in 2050, but I think it is helpful to say that that's what the water would have gone toward, is protecting Arizona CAP users from the impacts of future drought. And I think we can say that if that's helpful.
yeah, expand it a little bit.
Okay.
I would agree. I think a short report would be good.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can do that.
Thank you.
Just one of the things I'd ask folks to think about with regards to the Yuma desalting plant, to think about, I'm not, maybe I'm proposing it, maybe I'm not. Once you have this document, this memo, it might be, the path we might take is to recommend to the Governor's Water Augmentation Innovation Conservation Council to advocate for reclamation to operate the plant. I mean, just as something to do. Not that they will, but for the state to be on record that the resource that the United States has could have alleviated this outcome and it cost us this thing, and so going down the road, it's an important part of the water conservation toolbox in the lower basin. Something like that. But I don't want to get ahead of anybody, but that.
Yeah. How does the rest of the committee feel about proposing something like that? Should we put some, do we have a comment? I don't want to anybody off.
I'd probably ask what John Rasmussen about that.
Say that again?
John Rasmussen is on the phone right now.
They have the beer.
How he thinks about that. No?
Maybe so.
And you probably want to talk to Tom before it gets too far down the road, Bureau.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to give them a policy.
Oh, yeah. We have time to draft language and talk to individuals. It's not like we have to propose it today here and then, yeah. I don't have to mention it to the council in December. We have some time. But we can at least head down that path, and you can think about it, and then we can bring it up at our next meeting if it's something we want to do or if it's not. Yeah, go ahead.
I seem to recollect there were some financial increases that were potentially formidable if it went to full scale. And when we heard the presentation at the last meeting, it had to do with handling all the chemicals and for the I'm just recapitulating what was shared with us at the last meeting. So the level of operation of the plant might be worth nuancing. You know, we had 2 presentations today, pull up, and what was that, a third?
Third, yeah.
You'll need to reach out.
It's true. I mean, a third may be the right number, 2/3 may be the right number, and there may be a lot of hurdles at 100%. I'm sorry, I missed a hand. Go ahead, whoever. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to, I probably won't enunciate this very well, but the solution or the concept Chuck came up with, I think makes a lot of sense. It solves the problem of the reduction into the canal this year. Is that correct, Chuck? Mm-hmm. What if the level goes down more? That brings perhaps another state into the equation. If there's doing all these solving all the problems, how does this interstate agreement sort out so that some other states don't benefit and do this from that? Does that make any sense at all?
No, the other, it's a good point. Nevada does benefit already. If they run the plant, Nevada will benefit, just like Arizona will benefit.
Right.
Mexico will benefit.
Yeah.
So there are other states in Mexico that do benefit. And probably more indirectly, California and all the upper basin states will see some benefit to having Lake Mead at a higher elevation. So it's a good point. I think we look at it from the state's perspective because we're going to ultimately maybe have something to propose or ask from our state council. And I can mention, though, that we're not the only ones, and I'm sure we'd have some partners with us if we so desired in the future to help us get this thing running. I'm sure Nevada would love to have this plant run. Why it's less amount of water, I think their price of water is higher than ours.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So we're just a little over time right now, but we can wrap up with next steps in the next meeting day.
Yes. Real quick, Scott Reinert was talking about the Multi-State Salinity Coalition. We do have a summit at the end of February in Vegas. If anybody would like to go, they can get the details from me or from the website. Him and I served on that board together. Thank you. Proposals for the next meeting date for this committee. I am looking at probably sometime next year at this point, just with the holidays coming up. Is that fine for everybody?
Yeah.
Something in January? Anybody want to propose a date? Is Thursday a good day?
Yes.
Probably the 16th or the 23rd would work best for me. Same time, 10 o'clock. Does one of those dates work better than the other?
The 16th.
Better? When's, it doesn't matter, it's a Monday. President's Day or something, is it?
Might depend on when we have a meeting.
Yeah,
available too.
Okay, so we'll get that notice out to everyone. But we'll tentatively plan for the 16th, and if that doesn't work, it'll be the 23rd of January. Would anyone like to propose agenda items? Otherwise, I can come up with some. We'll get an update from our subcommittee at that meeting. That will be one agenda item.
Review of our memo.
Okay, we'll do a review of the memo that CAP is providing for us. Thank you.
And then Tuesday to get a preliminary list of information at DWR.
Oh,
About the soil,
about this.
Yeah.
characteristics.
Okay. Okay.
Oil and Gas Commission is housed at DEQ. Reach out to them.
Yeah, I think both DEQ and Oil and Gas Commission we're gonna have to talk with them between now and then to get their information.
Arizona Geologic Survey, which is Tucson.
Well, and yeah, good point. The geologist.
Carbon sequestration.
Yeah.
Would be, what you would use to evaluate protection.
Okay. So we have a lot of sources, and I can try to help you compile those too, and then we'll see what we can get from our sources and report back at that next meeting. Thank you. I'm sorry I ran late. I tried to keep these things on time.
Everybody?
Yep. Thank you.
Bye all.